The I Am Shillong fraternity offers a warm welcome to Mr. Lalit Pahwa. Mr. Pahwa is a mechanical engineer and has done his MBA from Symbiosis, Pune. He has an experience of more than 30 years, of which 17 years as a CEO of engineering, industrial automation, automotive tier 1 manufacturing companies. Currently, he is the CEO of Escorts Auto Products Limited. He has a vast experience and excels in assisting mid-sized engineering companies to develop growth and turnaround strategies and partner them to execute these strategies successfully. He has previously worked with American Excel and Manufacturing Inc., Web India Limited, TAL Manufacturing Solutions, etc. Sir, we now welcome you to grace the podium and engage the audience in an insightful session.
Thank you and good evening, friends. It's really I'm really happy to be at an academic institution, and I was just telling Anirudh that I leave no opportunity go by where I have to come and meet the students, and not only do I get a chance to interact with all of you and learn a lot, but also share some of my experiences in the industry. I did MBA way back in 1982. MBA was not the flavor of the season then, and there were just two IIMs, I think, Ahmedabad and Calcutta. Bangalore was still in a temporary campus, very small campus operating out of a Richmond Road hostel in Bangalore. So that was the time I did an MBA, fortunately from a good institution at Pune called Symbiosis, where the entire faculty was people from the industry. There were no full-time faculty except the director, who was from the Times Research Foundation, Dr. B.S. K.S. Chopra. So thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here. What I have done is prepared a small presentation more to provoke a discussion rather than giving a speech. I was asking your colleagues as to what is expected out of me at this program. And some of the inputs I got was because I've had a long stint with the automotive industry. Probably you would want to hear about the automotive industry from me, which I'll be more than happy to share. But I have not prepared any presentation on any industry, and not on the automotive industry certainly. What I have done is prepared a small presentation to provoke a discussion on management, what management is, and what you should look out for while you are here for 2 years, and then what is the expectation of the industry. And this is not the traditional view of what the expectation of the industry is. Rather than give a lecture, I thought if we can make it a very intense Q&A or an interactive session, you'll extract the best out of me in that format rather than a lecture. So the more questions, the more debate we have, I think the more valuable it is going to be for all of you. So here is the USB if you just want to put it. Is that okay, or you're more open to a lecture based on a PPT? I think that's what you see in most of your classes, don't you? Yes. So PPTs at times can be very boring. So I thought I'll not do that and take a more flexible, free communication kind of an approach. I believe 73% of you are engineers. So why is it? Why engineers into an MBA? Is it that they find it easier to get in, or do engineers see more value in management education than the others? Sorry? One at a time, I can't hear.
So engineer sees more value in management education.
Why do you think so?
So because as an engineer, it's difficult to be at top position. When you are formulating strategy, you need to know different sectors, and you can't do it with just technical things. So that diverse knowledge is MBA is the best platform for that.
Okay, and you are an engineer.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any non-engineer who can respond to this? Yeah.
So I think it's because conventionally most students are told that either you have to be an engineer or a doctor, or people need to realize that there is scope for more options and you have to take a risk by learning something that maybe you're not familiar with. Most of our parents, most of our family members have also studied the same thing. So it takes some courage to explain to them that no, I don't want to do engineering, I want to do something different. And if they support you, then you can do it.
Most of the engineers agree with this argument that because you want to be in industry and engineering is not sufficient, and therefore MBA helps. How many of you want to join a bank or a financial institution? There you go. So, where does engineering MBA help? How many of the companies coming for placement are from the financial sector?
The last year, we have had about 31% of the batch choosing roles in finance. So that's the maximum, and the second maximum is about 30% choosing roles in marketing. That is, finance and marketing are going neck to neck in terms of choosing roles.
So why would an engineer MBA choose finance? And 31%, that's a big number. That negates your argument. There is a reason why this is happening, and I think I'll provoke a discussion on this, and let's see what comes out of our discussions today. So I'm going to give you a practitioner's view of management, of what management is all about, and what an MBA education does and should. Okay? Yeah. So what's management? Is it a skill? Is it a competency? Is it an art, science, stream of knowledge?
It's a combination of competency and art.
Sorry?
So it's a combination of everything.
Each of these has a specific nuance. Each of these, shall I say, competencies, for want of a better word, has certain nuances. The last one is more, quantitative, more, more mathematical, or say scientific or firm. Physics is scientific. Art, competency, and skill, they are more softer or more abstract competencies that you need as a manager. You're right. It's all of them and concurrently. That's important. Can it be taught? Can art be taught? So concepts like physics, more specific tools like engineering, medicine, they can be taught. But what about the last three? that comes from practice. It comes from observing things, and a lot of it also comes from your DNA. You've got to be hardwired in a sense to I'm sure you have seen some of your colleagues earlier in school struggling with mathematics, right? So they cannot become good engineers because you need a certain basic ability to understand numbers, understand the logic of engineering to be able to, or logic of mathematics to be able to become a good engineer. But this is where it is very dicey. The first two definitely can be taught, are being taught, and India is one of the shining examples of where engineers and scientists have a very high caliber. Probably is because of our culture of a few thousand years old. What about the other three? Do you think that these are necessary, or you would need them as managers?
Yes.
Have you? I think all of you are in the first year, right?
Yes.
So just a few weeks into the course. But do you get a sense that there is an opportunity or conscious effort to understand these dimensions of management?
Yes.
There is. That's good news. Okay. Yeah. This is a very interesting book. I think all of you must read. It was written, I think, about 15 years ago by Henry Mintzberg, and he's challenged the idea of the fact that MBAs can create good managers. In fact, he's argued against it, and he's been very critical and at times cynical. And he says a manager cannot be created in a classroom. Okay, so read it and you'll find it interesting. Though I must qualify that I don't agree with all of the findings or the suggestions of Henry Mintzberg, but I think he's making a point. Yeah. So the disconnect between the practice of management and management education is primarily because of the lack of focus on those bottom three elements, which are becoming more and more critical than the first two. The first two are more logical, quantitative, more sort of result oriented. The bottom three are more abstract, though they have a far bigger effect on the results that you are expected to produce as managers. And they are the more difficult to acquire and learn. This comes from Henry Mintzberg's book, and therefore it's so critical. So it's the overemphasis on science, and therefore you have so many engineers. At one point in time, some 10-12 years ago, IIM Ahmedabad had 95% students coming as engineers, and a big portion of that were from IITs. So IIT IIM had become an automatic combination, and they've actually done some research. Those IIT engineers who did MBA from IIM, either Ahmedabad or Calcutta or Bangalore, and they went on to acquire very senior positions in companies, and they looked at the impact of those students or those managers on those companies, and compared it with some old school type companies in similar industries, and the results were not encouraging. You know, it was a deadly combination. It is a deadly combination. And think about this. An IIT, brilliant graduate, goes to an IIM, graduates from there and joins the financial industry. My own take is that the financial meltdown of 2008 happened because the financial industry was overwhelmed with people with such backgrounds and competencies. You know, analysts would give you a very different sort of view of why the meltdown happened, and there are multiple theories going around all over the world, economists, managers, financial experts. But my view is that it was that combination of engineers, managers across the world is what led to the financial meltdown of 2007, and even earlier, the dot-com bubble of 2001, 2002. Yeah. Analysis and technique. So the emphasis is on analysis and technique. Look at all your business cases. It's data, data, and a lot of data. And you can interpret that data in many ways. And there is a cold-bloodedness about interpreting that data. And the entire emphasis is on tools. And I think that overemphasis is what creates a deficiency in the manager. A business school graduate, a good, brilliant graduate, when he passes out, he or she thinks that you have what it takes to be a good manager. You walk into a company and you do what? Look at the data. Any problem that you're confronted with, you first hunt for data and then slice it, chop it, reconfigure it, and say this is the solution. Let's implement it. And in some organizations, you start facing questions, hurdles. You say this company doesn't understand. Old world company. Because the other dimensions that make a successful manager have not been emphasized. You've not had an exposure to them. And the older companies, while they understand those dimensions, but are not able to articulate. They're not able to convey, and therefore you kind of feel lost. And what I'm saying is very logical, is based on data, makes perfect sense, but the company doesn't seem to accept. So I think that's where that engineers getting into MBAs is an issue. They're very good at quantitative techniques and analysis. That's the core of engineering education. And if you're a brilliant engineer, it just arms you with that capability. All your entrance tests, how much of it is quantitative? Only 50%?
70%.
Sorry?
70%.
Yeah. Questions of reasoning, logic, puzzles. So engineers will succeed. No wonder you guys, for non-engineers, I understand now a quota is being created in management institutes. Because if that's not done, you guys will just flood. I've worked with the Tata Group as managing director of TAL, and And I was very, very close to the group executive committee, including Mr. Tata. And Mr. Gopalakrishnan was the executive director of Tata Sons, and he's from HUL. And they, after some years, and they have a very successful program called TAS, TAS. It's the equivalent of IAS in the Tata Group. And they found that all these managers that they were, grooming and fast tracking to become CEOs of their various companies were all engineers MBAs. And the result was that when it came to the softer dimensions of management, they were stuck. Those brilliant managers with a very successful track record had a lot of difficulty on facing challenges of that nature. Anirudh was just telling me that sustainability is something that is becoming the DNA or is in the foundation of IIM Shillong. I was very happy to hear that. Think of a company which is very successful in its business, but has a sustainability challenge. You build power plants. Tata Power does power plants, hydro, thermal power, nuclear power, and there is this question of sustainability. How do you address it? If you look at the financials, it's very straightforward. You have an internal rate of return, you have an investment, and these are three options given to you. You can optimize it and say, go for a thermal power plant. It doesn't make sense to do anything else. How do you answer that question of sustainability? Which, by the way, is critical. In some industries, it's becoming critical. In the auto industry, design the most efficient engine, make a vehicle which gives you fantastic fuel efficiency, ride comfort, and make millions of those vehicles, put them on the road. What happens to fossil fuels? Managers who've been trained with an overemphasis on quantitative techniques struggle with these kinds of challenges. People dimensions, most companies, when I was studying an MBA, there used to be these three, or even in our production engineering course, there was this men, material, and money. We are still, after more than 30 years, we are still looking at resources in that fashion. Men or people is not a resource like you would look at money or materials. To me, as a CEO of several companies, people are the resource. Everything else is ancillary. Think of these massive factories where you have all the technology, all the equipment, belong to large groups who have no dearth of capital. What differentiates between a good company and not a good or a bad company? Managers somehow seem to ignore it. There's a slowdown in the industry, lay people off, cut costs. And cut costs, the first cost to be cut is people. So you just, look at them as a number, as a cost. That unfortunately defines our business landscape today. And managers who've been trained in quantitative techniques have no other way to look at people. It's a resource, and it has a cost. Organizations, in my view, they just get damaged. And some of that damage is irreversible. And this approach of laying off people mindlessly and cutting costs is also because that's how you add people. When you're expanding capacity, when you're putting up a new project, you want to take advantage of the booming conditions in the industry, you just add people left, right and center. And then when a slowdown hits, you cut them as aggressively. Okay? So a quantitative view of everything overwhelms the right brain thinking. So left brain managers. Yeah. These are the consequences. I just mentioned the meltdown of 2008-9, 2001-2. And that, I believe, is just because of the left brain emphasis or thinking. What do we need to do? We need to get back to a more engaging, more right brain kind of training and exposure and discussion. And I think a mix of students from different backgrounds would help. I've got nothing against engineers. I have myself been an engineer and a brilliant one at that. All through 5 years of my engineering, I was a university ranker. So I've got nothing to bitch against engineers. But I think as managers, you need to be sensitive about what you're getting into and what you will be faced with. Right. Next. Bloated share prices, bonuses. As managers, and I'm sure many of you aspire to be CEOs. So CEOs' fat salaries, variable pay, and all those variable pay bonuses are linked to how the share prices move or what's the profit that the companies earn, irrespective of how those profits are earned. Okay. So management education needs to put back the emphasis on the right brain competencies, optimum level of brain-driven techniques. And how many of you want to go into advertising? How many of you of this lot are engineers? Wow.
Those who want to.
You ask an engineer to write a copy of an advertisement or draw a sketch. 9 out of 10 times we will draw triangles, circles, squares. Ask that person to write a copy, and it will be a very straightforward, logical statement. Communication is a lot about abstraction. Engineers find it very hard to be abstract. They would rather be accurate to the 4th place of decimal. Really, I have, I had these managers in my company, and they love Excel sheets. So he would make a proposal. As a CEO of a capital goods industry, we had these, big equipment running into crores, and he would prepare a cost sheet, and it would say, the cost would be 5 crore 32 lakhs 91,842 rupees and 39 paise. And I used to say, man, you are making a proposal for an equipment which is worth 1 crore of rupees. Why this decimal 39 paise and 842 rupees. Just round up those numbers. These are Excel sheet. I had put a formula. And when I would argue with that person, he or she would find it very difficult that what's wrong? What I've done is absolutely, perfect and accurate. Pricing. Many of you would do pricing as sales and marketing people. Pricing is about numbers, sure. It's got some relationship to costs, but there is a lot more to pricing. Pricing actually is an art. It's strategy. So if you have a formula that this is going to be my margin, or these are my costs, and you just put it in an Excel sheet and you get a price, it doesn't work. And because it is so logical, you would find it difficult to change it. The only way to change it or look at pricing is, compress or expand your margins. So we need a different combination. Yeah. That's important. We need to get back to classrooms every few years, and as practicing managers. And while you are in the classroom, get as many practicing managers as you can. Because that's the only way. To me, that's the only way where the inside goes out and the outside comes in. Do real life business cases. I was just telling Anirudh that for a short while, because being in a classroom is my passion, I taught a course in business strategy. Professors find it a little difficult to teach business strategy. And what I did to that class is I said, pick up a company from the Nifty 50 companies. So they are listed, so you have all the information. Made groups and said, look at their information and come up with a strategy for those companies for the next 5 years. If you were the managing director of the company, what would you do? So that kind of learning, those kinds of cases, I think will add a lot of value to your education. Yeah, I think one more. So it's not the end. In all other branches like engineering, medicine, you study and then there's a point where you think you know everything that you needed to know. The classroom phase is over. Engineering, you can probably, after your BTech, you can do an MTech. Medicine also, you can do an MD. Maybe go for another specialized course. Same holds for physics, and probably do a PhD, and that's it. MBA, actually, at the end of the MBA, you begin. It's just the beginning of a long journey of learning. And that is something that if you are conscious of, it will help you a great deal. I advise all the students of management that I meet is make reading your staple diet. As a manager, you must read at least for an hour every day, no matter how busy you are. It could be a simple daily newspaper. It could be, books. It could be movies, but of a kind. There's a tremendous amount of learning from these sources and keep at it. If you develop that habit of reading and learning, I'm sure you'll be very successful in your careers. And then come back whenever you get an opportunity. Come back to the classroom and engage, very thoughtful way and keep learning. Yeah. That's what it is. Management is application of all that you have learned and will keep learning. Okay. So it's a journey of learning and applying. That's all I had as a presentation, and now we can start Q&As and all kinds of questions, good, bad, and ugly. And if you expect some responses or want to know something about a specific industry, auto and engineering certainly I know, because I've been in that industry, but other industries also, because I have constantly learned in my career and picked up a lot of nuances of other industries as well. So I'll try my best to respond to your questions. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. My name is Lalit.
Please sit. Let's have a more.
Somewhere you mentioned that we have to learn from our experience. Right? Say we have been in a leadership role for say 5 years. It is imperative for us to learn from our experience. But somewhere you're also saying that we need to have classroom training. So are you towards having more textual learning or classroom learning, or towards learning on the job?
It's different in different phases of your career. Like right now, the classroom learning is the content is much more than experiential learning. But as you work and grow, the balance shifts in favor of say on the job or experiential learning. But you need to come back to classrooms once in a while to get your concepts right. Okay, or as we say in engineering, get your fundas right. Many times it's and when you come back, a practicing manager, when he or she comes back to a classroom, all the participants in that classroom are practicing managers. So the amount of peer learning that happens is just phenomenal. So you may be in an industry and faced with certain challenges or have certain experiences. But if you interact with someone who is not from that industry, or a function that is not your function, yeah, that learning is very, very valuable. And management expertise is all about cross-pollination. So you have to find that combination. When you are beginning your career, more of classroom like it is now, but as you grow, that content starts to become less, but should be there. Don't abandon it.
According to you, what is the positive side of engineering plus MBA combination?
Great logic and analysis. Some of the guys who don't come from engineering find it difficult to sort of absorb or use quantitative tools. For engineers, it comes very naturally. It's they take to it like fish to water. Look at economics. Economics is all mathematical, but is it? Engineers make fantastic economists, but many times make wrong predictions. Why? Because there is a branch of economics which has been getting a lot of importance since that financial meltdown, and it's called behavioral economics. And they say, what is the impact of a person's behavior on the economic decisions that he or she takes. You know, many years ago I went to Dusseldorf. This is a city in Germany. And very interesting thing I saw there, and it just struck me. That main street of Dusseldorf, on one side of it, you have all these blue-blooded global financial institutions. The Citibanks, the Lehman Brothers, JP Morgan, and the likes of those. And on the other side of the street, bang opposite, there's a full row of the world's best fashion labels. The Chanels and the Armanis and the Louis Vuittons. And I read an article the next day in one of the newspapers. I was on a flight, and it said, "Is there fashion in investing?" And that the author concluded that there was more fashion in investing than there was investment in fashion. You may be reading in the newspapers and thinking, oh, we are in a recession in India, right? How many of you agree that we are in a recession? What about the rest? Why? We are in a recession. Look, everything is tanking. Stock market tanked by 800 points day before yesterday. The rupee is falling. There is a CAD problem. Why are we not in a recession? Okay, you agree that there is a recession. So why?
Yes, because the kind of growth that we had in the last 5 years, I mean in the initial decade, phase of the previous decade, we could not sustain that. And when a country grows at that phase and suddenly it contracts 5.6%, it feels like a recession because you don't have avenues for export. You blame gold for your current account deficit. So what else can explain, like you cannot generate employment. So the kind of wave that the country was riding on, it suddenly stops and it feels like recession, even though we can say technically that we are growing at 5.6%, but we cannot generate employment.
Yeah.
Sir, I would say that India is not in a state of recession because first of all, our CAD is increasing because of our demand for gold. So we have the buying power, we have the purchasing power. And if a country has purchasing power, we cannot say that the country is in recession. And secondly, the reflection, the price movement of the currency does not replicate the countries in growth stage or in the recession stage. Our currency is depreciating because of the measures taken in US and because of our own imports. So there are various reasons. We cannot say that these reasons are responsible for our decrease in our growth. Our internal domestic economy is very strong, and our import demands are growing day by day.
So then why are we worried? Look at the financial newspapers. They are filled with all gloom and doom.
Their personal views, actually, they cater to the.
So that's behavior, isn't it? It's not logic. It's not economic logic. It's sentiment. So what has sentiment got to do with a cold world of numbers? Finance is about numbers, right? And very cold-blooded world of numbers. So what is sentiment doing there?
Initially, during the start of the decade 2000, the sentiment across the globe was India was the place to invest because we had the potential to grow with a great resource, the human resource, which we had our young population, and at that time the foreign investors had the sentiment that the government is doing all that is necessary to further the growth that the country was going through. But now what is happening? The foreign investors have this impression that the government is not doing enough to sustain the growth. So that's why a lot of the foreign inflows are not coming, which were earlier coming to the country.
Look, the words your friend is using. He's saying sentiment. He's saying impression. I'm saying what? Quantitative. It's all data.
But sir, it's their money, so they
Growth, GDP, So you analyze the situation and you say, yeah, this is what should have happened, these are the results. It's like a problem of mathematics. You solve it, come to a conclusion and say, okay, this is a variable that I need to change. And we'll get back. The technical, does anybody know the technical definition of a recession? Yeah.
The growth rate is in the negative for the two continuous quarters.
Correct. That's the technical definition of a recession. We are nowhere near. And all the pundits and great economists, some of them PhDs, are saying we are in a recession. And then when you ask them to explain, they talk about sentiment, they talk about impression, they're saying, oh, everything is down. How many countries in the world are growing at 5% or 5.5%? China is opaque, so whatever data comes out, you can't be sure. So we are the best country in terms of growth. And look at the mood. That's behavioral economics. And that was the other reason for the meltdown. Suddenly, values of assets. Value of asset, should it not be a mathematical formula or a quantitative formula? Why? Because of sentiment, its price goes into bubble territory and then suddenly it sinks like Sindhu Raksha. So behavioral economics is becoming very important in the world of finance. And in sales and marketing, you would be studying about consumer behavior. Consumer behavior, is it very rational? You may have the best marketing strategy, good product, well priced, and boom, the product bombs. So where all the quantitative techniques and Excel sheets and formulae and business cases that you do, they just go for a big toss. And then you sit at your boss yells at you and you sit and think, अरे मैंने तो सब ठीक किया था, सब logical है. These are issues that you need to ponder about and understand that ecosystem. Yeah.
So one of your first points of contention was that the financial and the managerial space has been overoccupied by what we broadly call this men of logic and analysis. And that you seem to say was one of the factors which could have led to the meltdown and all these things. What I feel is that the genesis of this problem lies in the way the method of entrance to these for the managerial field is structured in India. Let's take the example of India.
Not India. India is less of a problem.
I'm just taking the example of India.
Other countries are even worse.
Yes, I'm just taking the example of India. If you look at the exams, MBA entrance exams like CAP or any of the other exams, there is always observable tilt towards the engineering student in such a way that the exam is structured in such a way that the engineers find it easier to crack it than students of arts and commerce. But of course, after coming here, what we have seen is that most of our professors have been telling us, at least the engineers, the importance of understanding and imbibing something more than logic and analysis which we have learned. So what I want to ask you is, what is your personal opinion? Will this thing be enough? Okay, most of the engineers come in an MBA college, management college, and here we are taught to imbibe more of ethics or let's say the humanistic part of the managerial thing. Or do you think that there should be a paradigm shift, that is a change in the structure of the way students are taken in, absorbed into the MBA courses, so that there is a better motley mix of students from both the sciences humanities and the engineering technological courses so that gives a better result?
There are again two ways of doing it.
Yes.
One is quantitative. So you look at the numbers and you say, oh, engineers are coming in such large numbers. So you look at the reasons. One of the ways you can do it is change the structure of the exams. Okay. Or maybe put a quota. And some institutes have done it, including IIMs. You probably may not, it may not be visible on the surface, but they've taken a conscious decision that they will not have an intake of engineers more than X%. And this business school that I was talking about, where I used to teach a course on strategy, the president of this institute is Dr. Indra Parekh, who retired as director of IIM Ahmedabad, a very celebrated professor in organization behavior. She comes from the HR stream. And in that institute that she became the president of and is still there, institute called Flame, there they don't take more than 50% engineers.
But what I was asking is that, as you said, there should be a quota. This percentage of engineers is nothing more than that.
No.
Would that help?
No, so this is one way of doing it. If I was in their place, what I would have done is made it easier for the other students to come in from other streams. Meaning change the structure of the exam. Reduce the emphasis of logical questions or mathematical questions of reasoning and all of that in that exam. And that would ensure that there is a stream of students coming from other. And that coupled with your curriculum in the classrooms. For example, all the business cases, people love business cases, and institutes pride themselves in saying, oh, these are cases that are taught at Harvard. I've been lucky to be in a program at Harvard which is called the Advanced Management Program. Some of the best professors across the world teach there, and the eligibility criteria to participate in that program is that you have to be a CEO of a $100 million company. And there is a commitment that is taken from the chairman of the company that this guy will not be disturbed for 9 weeks. No communication from his company. He's just cut off. So, but even in those kinds of programs, the business cases are so terribly dependent on quantitative data. Now, if you take a very rational decision or come to a very rational conclusion based on that data, in real life, there's a 50% chance that you will fail. There is a wonderful Harvard case, by the way, which is taught in HR. I forget the names of. I think it's Bob Pearson versus, and there are these two managers working in a financial company in US, and this is a very famous case. All of you must read it, even if it is not taught here. And there is this manager who's very brash, very hard-hitting, does not work with a team, but an excellent performer. Gets very fat bonuses every year, has a phenomenal track record of success in getting customers. And this is an investment bank that he works for. And there is this other guy who's more balanced, a great team worker, understands his craft, but is not as aggressive or abrasive as this Bob Pearson. and his boss has to promote one of them. And he's thinking. He eventually decides not to promote this abrasive guy, but doesn't have the courage to tell him. So he invites him for a drink in the evening, goes to a pub, and he said, look, I have to promote one of you, and tries to go in a roundabout way, but this guy is very, very smart and sharp. He understands. He just throws the glass at his face, throws the food, and just walks out of that pub. The question is, did that boss do the right thing? And these are the kind of non-quantitative dilemmas that good managers will face on an ongoing basis. And you have to deal with them. There was a recent series on the television of this US professor. Again, he's at Harvard, and Professor I forget. There was a very famous. He's an old professor, and he's been teaching ethics at Harvard. And all those lectures are available on YouTube, so you can go and have a look at them. And he talks about very simple examples. He says there is a railway track which has been lying unused for a while, and there are children playing on it. And there's some problem on the main track, and the driver diverts it onto that auxiliary track. And the children one of them gets killed by the train. Would you punish the driver? Why?
Because had he been on the same track, all the passengers' life would have been on the stake.
That's one argument. But is that a justification to?
It's an ethical dilemma.
It is. And many managerial dilemmas are ethical. In fact, anything that is non-quantitative is in some way or the other ethical or more abstract. And that's what you should get prepared for. You will have to deal with those issues.
So when we talk about a shift from the quantitative aspect to a more qualitative aspect, where we talk of skill sets, when we talk of enhancing the way a person looks into a particular problem, and we implement that thing to our examination structure, don't you think that there would be a bias? Because wherein, suppose that we bring in a set of case studies and ask the students to give their perspective. Now different people will have different perspectives for sure, and the person who is evaluating that, he would have his own perspective. So some perspective that he chooses is a good one may not be actually that practically feasible.
Absolutely.
And maybe we might have a wrong choice then. So
Right.
basically this is where we are one of the light forces of our country, and our selection is very crucial for that matter. So don't you think there will be a bias in this particular thing?
Are you an engineer?
Yes, I am.
I'm not surprised. See, look at that question. Look at that question. What are you aiming at? You are aiming at a definitive solution, right or wrong. Many of the managerial problems do not have a right or wrong. So the guy, the professor who's evaluating you also needs to understand that there is no right or wrong. So if you are thinking that what he is saying or his analysis or conclusion is the right answer, and therefore I have to somehow figure that out and apply my logic in that direction. This train example that I gave you, there's no right or wrong. And so if you get evaluated based on that right or wrong, then there is a problem. And that is a problem that faces management education today.
So, but then when we don't know what to do and what, I mean, right or wrong, basically decides whether we go for it or we don't go for it. And how do we make a selection?
I will give you a very good example, and because I keep reflecting, thinking. When I graduated as an engineer, I had not done my MBA. I was interviewed by Telco, and there were these panel of 5 managers sitting across the table, and they used to pick engineers from all over the country, about 100 of them every year. So went through multiple levels of interviews. In my final interview, this panel of managers, with 10 years, 15 years experience, they asked me a question, and they said, how would you design a gearbox of an automobile? And since I had an elective as an automobile, I started to explain how a gearbox is designed. And then he asked me more, detailed questions. And obviously I was stumped. I had never seen an automotive gearbox in my life. And I just became very nervous. And I was selected, and at the end of the interview, that guy said, that manager said, and he happened to be my first boss, he said, we knew you couldn't design a gearbox. We were just trying to see what was your approach. Were you approaching that problem in a rational way? I think that is what students at your level ought to be sort of taught or taken through that grind, so that you develop that ability to think, look at all the dimensions of a problem and argue well. The purpose of my presentation was to provoke that discussion. There's no right or wrong. Quantitative analysis, numerical tools, help you look at the data. There are other layers of information that need to go into before you take a decision. Okay. So the moment you start thinking that there is a yes or no, you are in trouble. And unfortunately, that's how engineers are taught. And that's the nature of that education. I'm not faulting it. I mean, as an engineer, if you start, one of the differences between engineering and medicine, in engineering, there is a very logical cause and effect relationship. There are 5 variables, you change them, you know what is going to be the impact. In medicine, same symptoms, same medicine, same everything. 10,000 patients are administered, 9,990 would respond positively, 10 reaction हो जाएगा, 2 मर जाएंगे उसमें से. That doesn't happen in engineering. As a manager, sometimes you have to start thinking like medicine. ये patient मर भी सकता है. And you ask, the scientific logic of a person reacting to a simple medicine is not there. There are so many diseases even now with all the advances in technology where there is no known reason for that disease. So human body from that perspective is like a cosmos. There is a certain amount of chaos that you are still not able to understand. Okay, anyone else?
So you think whatever steps are taken by RBI or the finance ministry for the recent economic downturn, they are not justified. There is a trend in the Indian economy. I mean, the growth rate is decreasing every quarter. So whatever steps being taken by RBI, I mean, in the monetary policy or in the fiscal policy, they are not justified.
I'm not an economist, number one. Number two, RBI is only responsible for monetary policy. The fiscal policy is decided by the government of India. Okay? And the deceleration in growth that you see is, in my view, primarily because of the cap or slowdown in investments that started to happen 3-4 years ago. What you are now seeing is a lag effect of the slowdown in investments. If you look at the macroeconomic data, and particularly look at the high growth years, you will find that there was a high GDP growth coupled with a high savings rate, which went back into investments, and it was like a vicious, positive, vicious cycle. Those investments started to slow down a couple of years ago because of policy decisions not being taken by the government, particularly in infrastructure. All power plants were held back. This golden quadrilateral and the road projects were stalled. So that has had a chain effect on the downstream industries. And I think with the decisions that are now being taken and will be taken in the next 1 year, will start to show up results in the next 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. So I'm Rohan Modi. So I wanted to ask, like the recent automobile sector has been showing a downturn. So what are the companies are doing, like the four-wheeler and two-wheeler companies, are they halting productions for 5 to 10 days approximately every month, so that they could meet the demand and keep it at a certain optimum level. So sir, how does this impact the other suppliers of the auto parts that supply to these companies, and also what impact does this have on the efficiency of the workers that are in that production plant?
Okay. My favorite saying or analogy is that when auto industry and OEMs, we are referring to OEMs, which are vehicle manufacturers, उनको छींक आती है तो ऑटो कंपोनेंट इंडस्ट्री को निमोनिया हो जाता है, and that's what is happening, right? So an auto industry cuts production, and these tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 vendors, they just get into a big bad economic cycle. As far as industries cutting the number of production days, I think that's a wise thing to do, because it's just optimization of resources. So if your demand is 80% of your capacity, you would rather work on 80% days and produce at 100% efficiency than 80% every day. So that's what companies are doing, and I think that's a good rational thing to do to cut overheads. Automotive industry is not in a downturn; it is flat, except the commercial vehicle industry.
Sir, if I have to open a firm of mine, which is engineering solutions, let's say for automobile industry, after 4 years, would it be a good idea? And second part of my question is, would it be, which part of the things would be problematic? One is the technology, two the finance, three the contacts in the industry. Which would be the major factor which I should consider?
None. Okay. And if you are thinking to go set up an industry to serve the automotive industry, wonderful decision, but do it carefully. Think, and I'm sure you would be studying a course on strategy. Second year? Second year. Study that course carefully if you want to become an entrepreneur. Because you must understand the market dynamics. Strategy is all about sustainable competitive advantage. So if you pick a product where you are confident of having a sustainable competitive advantage, go for it. because the automotive component industry is too huge. At the last count, I think this year it was $40 billion. The Indian auto component industry is $40 billion. And it is likely to become $106 billion by 2020. That's as per the automotive mission plan and the ACMA 2020 vision. So it will become 2.5 times even from what it is now. So there is going to be a lot of opportunity, but pick your project carefully. Okay.
If not these three factors, what would be the major factors?
I said none.
No factors.
See, if you pick a product or any business, this applies generically. Any one of you wants to become an entrepreneur and get into business. You should understand this. If you have a good business idea which you can defend, you will attract capital. You will attract technology, and you will attract people.
Sir, my name is Gautam. So if you see the recent
I'll be happy to help you specifically on auto component industry whenever you want to. Yeah.
if you see the recent news, the IR problem regarding the automotive industry started with Maruti, Honda, and now Bajaj is facing it. So why the automotive industry is facing the IR issues? What's so intricacy and all this?
Are they facing an IR issue?
I mean, they are facing problems with labor, HR problems.
So, not that I know of.
Bajaj is also facing it.
That was a strike which has got over.
Strike, yes, recently. So, the automotive industries are basically getting involved into these issues. Why so?
Automotive industry is a large employer. And it's an old industry, so most of the OEMs, leading OEMs, have plants which are unionized. And in unionized plants, there is a wage agreement that happens every 3 years. And whenever a wage agreement is due, obviously you have these two parties on the table which are negotiating. So there is some, some tamasha that goes on. It's managing expectations. So that's what was happening, and companies try to reduce expectations, taking advantage of the so-called slowdown, whereas the unions want to keep their constituency happy. I mean, look at this guy, the Bajaj Auto Union president. He wanted 500 shares for each worker at 1 rupee. That was a ridiculous demand. And they went on strike. The company stood its ground, and the strike, absolutely illogical, irrational. Hero Honda, strike. That actually was Hero Honda. Not Hero Honda. Yeah, Hero Honda guys wanted some 40,000 increment in salaries. They wanted all casuals to be made permanent. And that's what was the reason that that settlement took little longer. Maruti, of course, was a bad situation where violence happened, and I think it was a failure of the HRIR team of Maruti. They just failed to understand the human dynamics of what was going on. So these things have not got anything to do with the slowdown. It just every 3 years. Tata Motors also recently signed a three-year agreement, and nobody knew. It just happened so amicably and quietly. Whereas Tata Motors is actually the biggest sufferer of the slowdown, because commercial vehicle industry has taken a 30% hit. It is a cyclical industry. Despite that, Tata Motors had a very amicable wage settlement with their union, while the other companies had a problem. Yes, please.
Taking decisions at a logical level or a behavioral level has more to do with the individual and rather than being engineer or non-engineer, because we have seen great leaders in people like Bill Gates, who was an engineer, and even if we come to India, we have Infosys, who was started by 7 engineers. So I couldn't agree with you on that point that engineers cannot think in a behavioral.
I have not said that. I have not said that. I'm an engineer. And I'm a very proud engineer. All I am saying is that engineers need to understand, when they decide to become managers, they need to understand that there are, their decisions have to not only depend on quantitative or rational outcomes. Okay, it's more than that. That is all I'm saying. Actually, I know some engineers who made wonderful HR managers, and they got into HR by accident. The group head of Tata Motors, the group HR head of Tata Motors, and still after retirement the company has not let him go. He's still an advisor. Now he's an advisor to Tata Sons. He's an engineer. And an industrial engineer. There was a problem in the factory, and this guy was an industrial engineer. He was a manager, and he was asked to get into IR problems. And he managed them so well, and eventually became, grew in that area, and ended up as the group HR head. And you talk to him, it's a pleasure to talk to him. How well he understands people and their human behavior. So don't get me wrong. I'm all saying that you've got to have the right focus. If your professors keep evaluating you on the right answer, then I'm afraid there's a problem.
So are we looking towards having a selection process wherein we'll have how it does its selection? A part of it is based on your aptitude and the other part of it is based on your profile. So maybe in years to come we'll scrap that and go that way.
I don't know whether you can scrap CAT. It's a classical demand and supply situation. So when the demand is more than supply, you've got to have some barriers or some tests that you've got to pass. To get into the IAS, you have to clear what, 3 levels? So the same will hold true for any area where you have this demand and supply situation. The question is, what are you screening for, and how do you do it? And more importantly, even if engineers, you get a larger percentage of engineers into the classroom, your curriculum and the way you evaluate and train managers is important. It's very, very important. So if your entrance test is designed to make engineers more successful, and then all your curriculum is designed on logic and reasoning, then God save this world. That's a challenge, and I think if you guys are sensitized or aware, I think you'll be in good shape if you read and keep yourself abreast with what is happening. Look at dimensions of the problems that you face. I think you'll do well. Yeah. Thank you, and it was a pleasure to be with you all today. good engaging audience, and all the best for your program.
Thank you.